Welcome back to another episode of Ask Someone Else. After a brief hiatus while we recharged and got some energy back, we're now back again to talk all things property. As always, we've got a special guest on this week. And this week we have the man himself from Brighter Investments, Romario. Let me add him in right now. While I'm adding him in, if you have any questions, question box so we can get some good value out of today's session. If you don't already, make sure you follow him once he joins. He does a lot of projects. Hello, brother. How you doing?
I'm alright, thanks, brother. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. Not too bad.
Good stuff.
It's good to have you on, man. So,
yeah, appreciate it as well to be able to speak with all the followers, what I'm up to and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, because you're super busy, and that's like one of the things I want to touch on. But I think before we get into like asking you any questions, if you could give the people a brief introduction of like who you are and what you do.
Cool. Okay, so my name's Ramiro. Obviously, I kind of run Brighter Investments, which I think Brighter Investments was kind of set up as a consultancy firm, to be fair, in terms of in real estate. So more with the focus on kind of helping other people as opposed to me as myself. Whenever anyone ever talks to me, I always say that I'm Ramiro, I'm an investor, and Brighter Investments is a consultancy firm that can help other people. That's kind of the origin that I give. So, I mean, I've been doing projects for about the past, I think, 8 years, starting in 2013. So similar to yourself, I think yours 2012. And I know kind of yourself and Tex are people that had been around for a long time, kind of way back in the 2012 or 13. So that's when I started, similar to what everyone else does at the moment in terms of the whole simple buy-to-let model, buy, refurbish, refinance. And over the years, gradual progression in terms of looking at a few of the kind of commercial to residential deals, the odd one or two new builds put in there as well. And then now I kind of like to use the terminology of having fun. So for me, I am having fun in terms of I do have quite a good kind of buy-to-let portfolio, a few HMOs in there as well. But now I'm having fun in terms of looking at some of those land developments, commercial to residential conversions. And if I can, kind of spending the time with other people and helping them on their journey as well, where I can really.
I see you've been doing a lot. Like you're very active. You're also very humble. Whenever I talk to you, you're trying to say, I'm not like you London lot. But I see you're busy. Like you're busy. So can I ask, like, how many projects or how many different things have you got that you're working on at the moment?
So at the moment, I would like to say that I'm probably about, I think top of my head, 8 or 9 at the moment in terms of active. Active meaning, okay, some type of refurbishment activities being done. So either it's the carpet being finished off or painting or new kitchen. If you add in some of the, I guess, background activities, which is planning permission, technical stuff, then maybe add another 3 or 4 on top of that as well. One thing I do like to say though is, because I do look very busy, but it's not a case of me all of a sudden today saying, look, I want to go do property, and I've gone out there and bought 11 houses because I'm sitting on £2 million in my bank. Yeah. It has been a case of, look, 2013, I am working full time. I am grafting is a terminology to use in terms of saving the £300 a month. Let's be realistic. It takes you 24 months to save a deposit of 15 grand. That's the kind of stage where I was back in 2013. And that hard graft over the years now sits me in a position where, probably similar to yourself, where you're on Instagram or social media and you're doing 2 new build plots or a residential 10 apartment block, and the attention and attraction that then gets in terms of from the friends that you've had for the past 15 years turning around saying, look, I want to work with you, let's work today or tomorrow. They are now willing to come on board on some of these projects, and you've got people on Instagram.
You've built credibility in the space. You've built your own personal brand, your own personal track record.
That's it. Yeah. So that's it. It goes a long way because all of a sudden tomorrow I could go and purchase something. It's not necessarily me, like I said, sitting here taking 200 grand out and buying it. I am working and aligning myself with the individuals that are also looking to create a return themselves. So we kind of JV or whatever kind of way it is to make that project work.
Make it work, because effectively that's the thing. We're not like private family offices with with just unlimited capital. So you have to look at the concept of the next best alternative foregone, or if you do one, what's the trade-off? Because it's always, that's why ROI is so important, and percentages.
Of course, 100%.
Just how much money I'm going to make, is how much money I'm going to make from how much I've had to put in what are my finance costs, what are my JV partners taking, and working out. But I think
that's it.
Some things that are really, really important. The first of which is like, I'd like to start with what you said about how you started off. So you were working, where were you actually working when you?
Originally I was at university. I finished in about 2012. Before I went to university, I was doing a full-time job that I then went to part-time while I went to university. So I was a little bit smart, and I talk about this all the time, saying I did get paid student loan, and I also was still working part-time. So if you imagine I'm getting paid, let's say £500 a month part-time, I'm still getting the student loan. So whichever way you look at it, I was either saving the wage, using the student loan to live, or spending the wage and saving the student loan. So I was always, had that kickstart of saving one of the two. So I did, fortunately, when I finished uni, have enough to actually just straight away, even before I finished uni, just buy a house, buy to let. I think back then it was not 25% deposit, it was 20%. So purchase price, roughly about 60 grand, all in, 15, 16 grand deposit, which isn't much. And unfortunately, you can't get a house like that where I got it anymore, because that's a long time ago. But that gave me the kickstart. I then went and worked full-time from 2013 to 2017, doing marketing, which is what I studied. Again, an okay wage, average UK salary, I'd like to say. But that then gave me the, I guess, monthly money that I could make, as well as the rental income that I was getting as well. So I then managed to work with one of my business partners, which was actually an uncle, and we were starting to do kind of 50-50 projects. So even back then, you're talking about kind of 70 grand, and I was only 22 years old. So see, even in some cases, he would put in 50 grand. I would only bring 20 grand to the table, but we bring in all the time aspect of, it's not my lunch break, I'm going to the project. I finish work at 5 o'clock, I'm going to the project. I'm working till 12 o'clock at night after my work shift, saying, look, what materials do the guys need on site? So a lot of that was me, which I'm not saying was worth the extra split, but he just said, look, if you're going to do the numbers, then why not? I'll put a little bit more in, and we'll work something out as to how it goes from there.
Definitely. When I speak to a lot of young people, I think there's this really weird, it's like a weird full circle, because the plan in the long term, when everybody talks about financial freedom and having time, that's the real long-term goal, right? We want to have time to be flexible to do what we want to do. But ironically, what we don't realize is when we're young, when we have less responsibilities, less overheads, maybe we're at university, we've got way more time than a lot of people that are further down the line. So in terms, you might not have the capital, but you can use your time as an asset to leverage what you can do and who you can work with and how you can get a deal across the line.
100%.
And I think, you know, what you said in regards to just the way you started, I think that's so important, because I think there's a lot of, you know, people that, not even people, there's a lot of property people in general that just talk about, you know, it seems like everybody started from nowhere, and it's just like, oh, well, that's, you know, that's it. And I think like sometimes when, I don't know, maybe like a blog page or something like that, repost something that I'm doing, and it's just like it's like a reel or something where I'm saying, oh, how to flip this house. And like, well, actually step one was you had to have £100,000. And I'm like, well, no, I'm saying step one because I'm just talking in really like micro terms in this property. But really step one was sorting out your credit. Step two was starting to get a wage. Step three was saving. Step four was your attitude towards what you wanted to do in the future. And there's so many little micro steps that we take along the way that I think for somebody that, you know, not everything happens now. We live in this kind of microwave era of social media where everybody wants to do everything straight away and everything has to happen tomorrow because everybody looks like they're doing amazing stuff all the time, whether it's social media or whether it's friends, family, etc. Because you only see the good things. But I think it's really important, like what you said and starting out, look, you might see me doing all these projects, but that's 8 years of hard work.
Yeah, and that's it.
It's not going to happen overnight, but it's definitely possible. And obviously your journey shows how that is possible. So I think
that's it.
There's some things, but I'd just like to commend you.
Thank you very much. And even, I mean, just to add to that as well, just quickly for a minute, but I remember going to work. I went to work one place and I used to start at 8 o'clock in the morning. I've never been a morning person. That's my only downfall. So I was getting up at, let's say...
I'm with you on that. Like, listen, when I was doing Rent to Rent Text, like, our office opened at 10 and it was because... Like and that was like my trade-off of, look, okay, if I'm going to be doing something that's like 9 to 5, like I'm in it full time, at least if I'm going to be self-employed, let me determine the hours and do 10 till 6.
Yeah, that's it. So, so it literally started at 8. It was a good year of my life in terms of focus, but I used to drive on this road. So there's a certain road where you were driving to this workplace and it's like you pass through the student area. So you know what student areas are like. You literally... There are mess in terms of bins everywhere. You got students walking up and down. But I used to walk there and drive through it and think, I would love to have a house in this area, because I knew, look, the purchase price there, we're talking about 2030, they're probably 250k. Nowadays, we're talking about 500k, for example, 8 years down the line. But 250k, I was thinking, look, how on earth do you have 25% deposit of that, which is roughly 70 grand, 80 grand, something like that, top of my head? And I used to think, look, I would love to have one of these houses that are making, I think back then, maybe like 25 grand a year, 30 grand a year. And now, 8 years down the line, the same street, obviously, I go on there sometimes because I do have houses or projects on those streets. And sometimes I just sit there in my car and think, hang on a minute. 8 years ago, I used to say, I would wish. Now I'm sitting here saying, look, I'm doing two on the same street at the same time, or I've got two around the corner. And I sit there and say, do you know what that was? For getting up at 7 o'clock when I did not want to, and going to a job that I got paid.
It wasn't, you didn't buy that property the day you went to go and put in an offer. That wasn't how you allowed yourself to buy the property. You bought that property from the year in work, from the year not going to the club when everybody else was going to the club, not going to Ibiza when everybody went to Ibiza, because you knew long-term goals. And I think that's why it's really good to have those long-term goals, so you know what you're working towards, but then also have those little short-term goals to allow you to stay motivated and say, okay, I've done something, I've achieved something today. So whether or not that's logging into Experian and seeing, you know, your credit score's gone from amber to green, or, you know, do you know what I mean? Just doing something, these little steps that you know are going to get you towards your long-term visions.
Yeah, 100%. That's it.
I think one thing a lot of people, obviously different areas, but a lot of people are struggling with at the moment is finding deals. So obviously that, you know, you've got 8 years in of experience, but you've managed to potentially source, let's say, anywhere from 8 to sort of 12 projects at the moment. Like, how have you managed to do that? Like, what would you say? Like, because so many people are telling me I can't find a deal, sources are giving me rubbish deals. How have you managed to do that?
And I'm going to probably spin it back to something that I hear you say quite a bit as well, which is, and I heard you talk about this on, it was either the property strap one a few weeks ago, and you said, and this is probably going to be my same answer as well. What I realized is when I was looking for deals 8 years ago is something's on for, let's say, 100 grand on the market, someone's buying it for 110. They must have seen something that all the other 8 people didn't see. So the same example goes here, where I can see something. I'll give you an example. I mean, I don't focus on HMOs, but I'll give you an HMO example because I can do them and I still do them. So again, there's a 4-bed HMO. That's 4 bed is in. It's 3 stories. You got living room, dining room, ground floor. You got the 4 rooms upstairs on the next 2 floors. That's screaming out that it's a 6-bed HMO. The agent or somebody at a 4-bed price. The 4-bed price might be 250 grand. A 6-bed price, you're talking about 450 grand. It's so difficult to say, look, there's 2 rooms downstairs. They've even made a mistake on, not a mistake, sorry. They've not listed it in the right way. It has the potential for 6 beds. So at 250 grand, of course it's a steal. All you do is you go in there, you extend the kitchen, you make sure the rooms are big and compliant enough, you might put a roof light in. There you go, done. You go in there, spend 100 grand, it's then worth 450. So little things like that. And I know you speak about the flat conversions of it might be a very big 1-bed flat. The potential is there to have a 2-bed or a 1-bed with an ensuite. Little things like that. I'm even doing a bungalow at the moment. It's a structural damage bungalow. It's a 4-bed. It's as simple as going in there, changing it to, rather than 4-bed, 1 bath, it's 4-bed, 1 bath, 1 WC, 1 ensuite. So it's just adding that little bit of extra value.
I think you've touched on some really key points there, like in a really short space of time. But it's firstly knowing the potential, like seeing the things that potentially other people have missed. But also coupled with that, a great way to get a deal is through lazy agents. Agents that don't advertise stuff well, that maybe it's a property that's owns the freehold, they've sold it as a flat, but the flat owns the freehold to the building. I've had stuff like that. The other thing you touched on was stuff with issues like structural damage. If there's something that's going to scare a lot of people off, but you have the expertise to know how to solve those problems, you then are going to be more confident to go in and buy when other people aren't, because you've already done your numbers. And I think then the last thing is actually the numbers themselves. So really understanding what the potential of that property is, like, you know, what's it going to be worth, what works you would have to do, how you'd have to execute them, time frames, and just kind of all of those things roll into one. A great ways to find a deal, because
and one thing I'd say,
a magic place to find deals. Like,
no, there's not. Yeah, and even I'd say gradual progression. So I talk to a lot of people. Well, I see people that probably same years experience as me, and they're still doing run-of-the-mill buy-to-lets. And there's nothing wrong with running mill buy-to-lets, but in terms of living off rental income, so to speak, or living off property, I think gradual progression is great, that you can always start to diversify and step up year by year. That's where I put myself in that category of what I've done. I've not just jumped into development. I've gone gradually upwards. But the point I'm making here is I had projects where I was working in Nottingham, and Nottingham's a good city for, let's say, Londoners to invest in. I then got to a stage in kind of 2017, after 4 or 5 years, where I'm constantly coming up against Londoners that are just outbidding you on cash deals and just getting everything, sweeping up. So I then said, hang on a minute, if I can start to diversify a little bit in terms of, let me try a project now with a little bit of crap above a window, for example. It's as simple as changing a lintel. It's very simple. But then when I do that project and it works well, I then say, wait a minute, I'm now ready for something with a little bit of subsidence.
Yeah.
So you can't keep slowly increasing the risk you're taking.
You're not going to know everything day one. Like that's the thing. Yeah. You're never, and a lot of people, there's that common phrase of people get stuck in like analysis paralysis. They're always looking at deals, always they're always finding a reason why they shouldn't do the deal, rather than looking at the reasons why they should do the deal. And don't get me wrong, the reasons why you shouldn't are just as important. But if you're always outweighing them, like I think, do you know who I think some of the worst people are with this? It's estate agents that want to get into property, because they're constantly seeing people buy properties, and constantly, maybe they see the person that got that unicorn deal, the goose that laid the golden egg, the perfect deal, and they want to emulate that. But the reality is they're not going to come up all the time. They're going to come up once, once a year, once every 5 years, that perfect deal. And if you're always waiting for them, then you're going to slow down your progression. Whereas, like you said, if you take those baby steps, you work into doing different type of projects, and you grow, you apply your trade effectively, like any other like job role. You learn on the job. But you know when I called you the other day, I didn't call you actually. I sent you voice notes, and I was like, "Bruv, you're mad hard. Like you should talk more. Like you talk so well, and you know so much. Like to the point that, like, if there's people like Tej, Alfred, James Shelter, like they've got to get you involved, because bro, like trust me, see what you're doing, and we'll go on to like the stuff where you're doing not like direct mentorship, but you're taking people on and actually showing them the ropes and showing them what you're doing. Don't get me wrong, they might not start doing properties overnight, but what they are going to do is you're going to give them that inspiration. You're going to be potentially the catalyst to 10 more, 20 more investors and like property developers, which I think, is sick, bro. So definitely keep doing what you're doing, especially doing them site visits. Like I see stuff, and I've seen stuff that you do with the site days of showing, like saying, look, this is strictly for under 20s. We're going to do a site day. I'm going to show you like what it means, why we're doing like a block foundation, or why we've had to go down further, and what the cost of that is. And they might not need that for 5 years, but just so they start to realize, look, this is something that I managed to solve and I managed to learn. I'm not a structural engineer. I'm not a surveyor. I'm not an architect. I don't have a full degree in property development, but through experience, through learning, through doing, through taking these steps. Yeah, bro. Like, trust me. Like, and if you're in here, there's like 60 people in. I'm sure probably it's a mixture of the followers. But if you're not already, trust me, make sure you go follow, bro, because he's actually doing proper stuff. Like he's a proper developer. Like there's a lot of people that are potentially property investors. They buy to lets, but he's a property developer. He's developing properties. He's adding value, like across the whole sort of plethora of different projects. So you're doing a lot. So definitely. Yeah.
And even so, don't get me wrong as well. I mean, one thing I'd say is, again, I'm a developer. I don't need to know everything. I'm not a sales guy. I don't sell windows. I don't sell doors. But I still think, I mean, I worked with a girl years ago. She always said, look, we do marketing. That's what I did. And she said, look, you don't need to know the ins and outs about a product. So for me, I don't need to know, I guess, ins and outs about, look, it's this app or it's this shower, but have that top level overview. So if you can say, oh, look, this is a reason that damp occurs and this is how I can solve it, that's still good. Know a little bit about every single section. Yeah,
I think that's great advice. Like you haven't got to be able to solve every problem, but you've got to be able to identify problems and know who to reach out to solve it. Like you said, if you see damp on a wall, just the fact that you can just being able to pick up quickly. Look, that's just guttering. You just change the guttering. It's £200 because somebody could come in and tell you that's rising damp because it's been there for ages and want to quote you for a whole tanking, rip this out, silica render, 1.5 meters. And I've been there. Like I've made the mistake of listening. Like we've made mistakes. Like we've spent money we didn't have to spend. But at the same time, sometimes that £2,000 I didn't have to spend, I could have spent it on a course, but I think I learned that lesson a lot more when it came out of my pocket. And I said, yeah, you're not getting me like that again. I'm going to learn a little bit more, really work out the importance of a second opinion and ask why. Like, that was my thing. I think that's how I learned. Like, so even when I didn't know, when somebody's coming in and telling me, you know, oh, you've got to have a flitch beam here, like, and you can't use X, you have to use this. And I'll just say why. Like, so I might not understand it, but then I can take what they've said away and go and maybe do some of my own research.
100%. That's it.
So how do you feel about buying a bank? That's mad. Oh, you bought a bank.
I think with that one, to be fair, I won't even lie to you on that one. When I saw it advertised at the bank, I got a little bit caught up and thought, not caught up because I paid the right price, but I thought, yeah, that's about that.
You saw yourself, like, you probably rolled back like 20 odd years, remember playing Monopoly and said, yeah, I'm going to buy a bank.
Yeah, that was it. I think it was, to be fair, I was thinking, oh, look, how can I do a video shoot and the whole process and finish it with 8 flats would be great. So, yeah, but I mean, even that, I mean, again, going back to that one, and again, this is going back to the whole leveling up scenario. I've done something called discharging conditions before this bank. Okay, so discharging conditions, as people will know, is when the council have said, look, yes, you've got planning, but to start the planning or to start the build, we need you to assess a certain scenario. So in this case with the bank, it sits near a tram line. The tram line, as you know, they put it similar to the underground for those that are from London, but the vibration...
No, we got trams, bro, in Croydon, we got trams.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, Croydon's got trams, yeah, sorry. But yeah, the vibration is crazy. It's unreal. Again, not in trams, but in terms of... I've done projects near the tram system, but never a big flat conversion. It's always a house, so it doesn't really matter about the sound. But in this case, the Sheffield City Council said, look, we need the flats to reach a certain decibel level. So me to combat that issue it's not easy. So me to now prove to the council, this is what I'm going to do. It's not me, myself as Romero. It's now all these experienced people of the noise assessor.
Yeah, so you get the sound testers in to come and have like a proper sound scheme of how you're going to do impact sound, airborne sound.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then even that, I mean, even this scenario, these guys are coming in and saying, look, we're experienced, we work with the council in Sheffield, we know them well, but we don't have many scenarios like this where a building actually sits on the tram line and we've got to solve this problem. So even them, I mean, I'm not saying saw them struggling, but I saw them finding it hard to find a solution.
Because they're working, not everything is just, there's not just a one size fits all, there's not just an obvious solution all the time. But I think, and that's where, like I said, that's where potentially sometimes you get a deal because, like, obviously you didn't know about these conditions, but people could have been worried about that. But on the basis that you thought to yourself, do you know what, like, this is a problem that can be solved. Whether that means that I'm going to have to do external, internal insulation on both sides, I'm going to, do you know what I mean? I'm going to have to look at the schematics of how we build the floor structures, etc. You know, I can't just go for your standard resilient bars, suspended ceiling. I'm going to have to go for something a bit more intense. But at the end of the day, you take all of these things and you just put them into your costing and you work it backwards. Do the numbers still make sense? Can we still do it? And because your bottom line is what it is. And that's what people love to talk about. So, you know, because people are nosy, you don't have to talk about this deal, but like what do you target? What do you target deal? Like do you mind sharing like what your
Yeah, so to be fair, I'm going to go back to 2017 when I said things got a bit more harder. So going back to then, I was doing the normal buy-to-let refurbishment everyone does, where you refinance. You might leave a little bit in, even though in those days, back in 2017, you leave 15 grand in, 20 grand in, because I'm probably in them. So purchase price, 100 grand, refurb 20 grand, you might be worth 160 or something like that. So if you sold it, you'll definitely realize the 20 to 30 grand profit. But refinancing at that level for an asset that's worth 150, 160, you're always leaving money in. So people saying the BRR, you take all your money out. For me, I'm experienced. I've done that less than a handful of times, just to be realistic. That's how hard it is.
And it is. Like, that's why I've not really focused on that model, just purely because, like yourself, I'm like, okay, we want to go and do bigger and better things and grow slowly. And if I'm constantly reducing my working capital, it means my timelines for how long I'm going to be able to go and do bigger projects. Obviously, long term, you hope for capital appreciation. You say, look, I'm coming refinance again after 3 years. But if you're doing deals where you're ending up leaving, you know, 15% of your capital in this a £500,000 project, that's a lot of money that you've got left in, even if it is only 15%. It's still a lot of money. And you might be making, like you said, an income of I know you might have £200,000 in a deal and you're making £20,000 a year, like from a rental.
Yeah.
But my thing is, again, we have limited capital. So
Correct.
how much money could I make from that £200,000 in my pocket versus £20,000 sitting in the property?
Correct.
And find that balance there for yourself of what works for you.
Yeah, correct. That's it, 100%. So I think what I then did in 2017 when I started to say, look, Nottingham is a difficult market, I then moved a little bit away from my home area, so to speak, and started to do Nottinghamshire. So now we're talking about 50 minutes away from home, but it's still Nottinghamshire. I then said to myself, look, I want to be achieving an ROI of around the 35% mark, 37% mark, which is a big ask because usually 20% is normal. Return on capital employed, I then set myself a target and said, look, I want to be achieving 100%, which is difficult. Not saying I do, but it's very difficult. 100% return on capital employed. So if 100 grams going in, I want to double up. And I'm not saying I've achieved that because that's very hard, but that was my original kind of aim going into a deal, saying that to myself. Again, falling short of it, achieving maybe 87% return on capital employed or 30% return on investment. But they were the kind of levels that I was saying, look, if it's my deal with my capital, that's where I need to be. If I'm doing with someone else, again, that's the aim, but it might fall a little bit shorter than that. But again, going back to the point of some of it is probably their capital as well, and they're happy to leave some of it in anyway, going into a deal. So I kind of said to myself, look, for me, that's the only place my money now goes. I said, I'd like the cream of the crop, the best of the best, when that's available. And that's kind of typically where I then started to be, from diversifying and saying, look, structural damage projects. And even just to share one at the moment, and again, this is unreal and this is not the norm. There's a project that was purchased in, I think it was March this year, structural damaged near Sheffield somewhere. And that was a purchase price of 148,000. On my spreadsheet, I said, look, happy to pay 210. It went as unsold as an auction lot. So imagine unsold. I mean, I've only seen unsold maybe twice in something I've actually bought.
Unsold has been my thing recently. Like two of the properties I bought this year have been unsold lots, and a couple of last year as well, because they've got problems that people think you can't solve.
Yeah, so crazy. So yeah, literally, I mean, again, this is crazy. It doesn't exist. But 148 purchase price, gone in there, structural damage, rectify the structural damage. This one has no subsidence. So I'm doing a few at the moment. I'm doing some more down south that have subsidence. You've got to underpin. This one is just straight fixing.
I think I saw it's a lot of like resin bars, some lintel issues, some other stuff.
Yeah, minimal. So the refit on that.
Cosmetic, I think I saw the pictures. It looked bad. And that's where your expertise comes in, because it looks bad. It looks like a lot of work. It looks like a headache. But you looked at it and said, worst case scenario, I'll do all of that. But I reckon, get the reports done. I reckon you can get away with it, and you could.
Yeah.
So that's it. What was your build cost?
So the build cost on that one, so near about done. Just got the carpet still on that one, but we're in at about 52. Okay, so 8 plus 52, stamp duty, had all that in. Let's say you left it 210. I think, or going into it, I thought, yeah, it's worth probably 290, but I think I'll push and try and get 305 or 300. And agents come around and said, look, it's strange because it's a bungalow, but it's got a little bit of a basement as like an extra 4th bedroom and a utility downstairs. So like someone dug down. So they turned around and said, look, it's a little bit unique. Put it on for 350, 360. Let's see what happens. I've turned around and said, look, I think it's a bit expensive. Let's go 340 to 350. So even that one, I mean, again, the numbers on that are crazy, and that doesn't exist now. Honest to say, look.
But then, do you know, so some people, and I think I say this a lot, I think I might have said this for like 3 weeks in a row, so I'm not promised I'm not going to say this again, but like, you see, because you're doing deals and you're proactively out there, like, what a lot of people would turn around and say is, like, bro, you've been, like, that one was lucky. Like, and it was lucky. It was, you wouldn't have been lucky if you weren't out there doing 10 deals in a year. You wouldn't have got that luck, because you might, like you said, across the board, you may average, like, you know, a 30-40% return on investment or whatever the case may be. But you have that one that's like that amazing deal when you got that because you did all the other deals that where you were just, they were ticking over, they were doing sort of the standard stuff. And then you got the ones that absolutely smashed it out of the park. And I found it is a lot of the stuff that's just random. You come across it and you kind of think, yeah, that one stacks, I'd pay more for that. And then you end up, because what you would have paid for it, you got it for including costs as a finished product.
Basically, that's it. But typically something like that, I mean, people see me talk about subsidence a lot. Typically, I would say subsidence, you could be around the 40 to 50k mark as a profit figure. So 50 to 60k, sorry, I should say. If you end up at 45, happy days. But that's typically where you'll be on the subsidence ones, because they do tend to sell obviously cheaper than they should be. So a few of them do at the moment, they're around that mark of the 60s, to be fair, which is about right. So that one I just said now, like 100, 110. Yes, it's unreal. It shouldn't be the case. But like you said, if you're out there doing deals and you come across it.
Exactly. What did someone just say in the comment section? The universe helps those that help themselves.
Yeah.
Which I think is very key. Also, if anyone's got any questions, make sure you use the comment box, because obviously, like, I've been asking a lot of questions. We've been having a great discussion. We could literally talk all day. But I think if there are any specific questions that you want to ask based on the conversation we've had thus far, definitely get them in, and sure you'll do your best to answer them. So I think just while we're waiting for a couple of people to ask questions, obviously you've got a really busy pipeline. Like, sort of, how do you envisage your next sort of 24 months? Like, what's just obviously getting out your pipeline and rebuilding it, or what's your plan?
Yes, I think for me, I think I've got to focus still on the development side. So I prefer new builds, just for the fact of, you probably know as well, everything is new. So there's no, I'm taking down the ceiling in the bathroom, then the ceiling in the kitchen fall through, it's an extra £300. The new build is just, look, my spreadsheet's broken everything down. There's 5 rooms, the plaster each room costs this. It's a 5-bed rewire, it costs whatever, 5k, for example. It doesn't change. So I do like new builds for that reason. I think I like the whole aspect of whatever, doing 6 units or 10 units. So my focus is that now. It is a case of, look, my next deal of new builds needs to be 10 units or 15 units. I will still be looking at, I guess, the commercial to residential side, 10 flats, 15 flats, 20 flats, whatever that is. In terms of the run-of-the-mill buy-to-let, probably something that I'm not, I guess, focusing on anymore myself. I'm not really looking to grow any more of that portfolio either. But from time to time, I'm from Nottingham, there are HMOs that come up, and they come up at a great price if you can see the finished product that you can do. So I will still pick one of those up from time to time, I would say.
And I guess probably when you're doing the flats as well, and you're doing, depending on, like you said, if one of those deals that you talked about where the numbers ended up being amazing, and if it ended up being one of the larger projects and you said, look, I can pull all of my money out and keep these units, it's just a nice block portfolio to potentially have. So gives you those options as well, because I guess it's economies of scale in terms of management, oversight. If you want to manage them in-house rather than in-house team, if you've got properties that are all in one place, you've just got sort of that geographical benefit, and the fact that, you understand the building inside and out. It's effectively your own sort of home builder's warranty. So you're internalizing it, you're almost streamlining the process.
Yeah, so yes, I think that's my 24 months in terms of, I think, new builds. I think for me now, I would like a kind of a legacy of, look, if you want to talk new builds, talk to Brighton, for example. Or again, talk property, talk to me.
Don't worry, you're already that guy, man. You're already that guy up there. Just start slowly working your way south, and we'll meet up somewhere in the middle.
I think man, come in.
But trust me. And then I think we got our first question actually. So this is from Hannah, and it says, if I'm going to go into property development, can I do it as a side hustle, or do I have to go all in?
I think for me, when I started, so for me, mine was a side hustle to start with. I know a lot of people's is, and the reason being is, for me, I didn't go with the rent-to-rent model first. I went straight into the buying model. So for me, if I had, let's say, £15,000, unfortunately, that 15 grand disappeared straight away when I bought my first house. So I needed the actual job so that I could be making my income per month of even as small as £1,500 a month. I have quite a good saying of, there was times where I made £500 a month, and it's not about how much you make, it's more about that margin of what you could save. That was my theory. So if I was making £500 a month, I was trying to save, like I said, 400 quid, 450, as much as I could, so that when I then make £100 in a month, as an example, and being realistic, I quit my job at a point and had, I think, 4 or 5 buy-to-lets. There would have been points where no one pays you in a certain calendar month. As an example, one-off. Yeah. If I made £50, the point being there is, I can still survive. Of course, I've got bills, my 400 quid, but the point I'm making is, look, I can survive. So I could make £50 or 5 grand. You can survive whichever way. And that's one thing I'd say to anyone using it as a side hustle. That's fine, but that job, make sure you're saving as much as that percentage you can, so that you can start putting it into your side hustle. And
I think a lot of that, just to kind of add sort of my 2 cents to that question, Hannah, you have to look at what you want out of property development, where you're planning to go, and what you have at your disposal. Because if you've got a load of capital, you could potentially just leverage your capital for somebody like Romero in the position that you were in 8 years ago that has a load of time, a little bit of capital, but it could be your side hustle because you have somebody to work with you. Whereas if you don't have it, like you don't have the time, you don't have the capital, then you're probably going to have to go more all in to give you that like higher percentages of being successful.
And just to add to that as well, so I'm just going to be controversial a little bit and say, look, when I started, and I think I did my first one on my own, I worked with an uncle on my second one, I then started to outgrow him. Okay, so he was kind of, I'm not saying a hindrance, but a little bit hindrance of moving forward to the next step. So when we started to say, look, let's do the buy to let, run the mill, 70 grand deposit or bridge, whatever it is, that's fine, he was all in. As soon as I started to say, look, a little bit of structural damage and it could go left with the money needed in terms of an extra 10, 15 grand, he started to backtrack a little bit. And what I then noticed, look, I need to now level up myself, but I need someone that can bring me upwards as well. So I started to push out on my own. And then as you start to push out more, you then start to bump into people that are doing the bigger stuff that you can then start to, I guess, pull off them and then push you further on as well. So I think one thing I'd say is don't always, it's great to have a mentor, but then also always realize when your mentor needs to be someone else that's higher up.
Yeah. And I think just like they don't even necessarily have to be higher than you or richer. Like, so, okay, a mentor probably does have to be, but your business partner doesn't have to be richer than you, but they have to motivate you, and your visions have to be aligned. Because if you're going this way and that you're going that way, like you're on course to split and obviously have issues. So I definitely think if you're working with anybody, don't just be like, oh, you like property, I like property, both got some money, let's do some business together. Because I think that's a common mistake a lot of people make. You have to actually make sure that you guys can get along to do the business, to make sure there's longevity and to make sure it's going to be successful. Tej is in there now, and Tej is calling you. He said nothing scares you. He said you're the structural king. So
yeah, I've been doing it.
I want to see you down at, so we got my guy Tej. He's got his networking event that's sold out on the 20th, so he can't even go. He didn't even give me a comp because he says that, you know, I can't remember what he said. He said he's too cool for me and I can't come. But we're gonna go to the next one, aren't we? Right? And we're gonna, you know what I mean? We're gonna go and do something.
Yeah, we did.
I've just, definitely. I know I think we said at some point in November you're gonna come to London, right? And I'm actually gonna kind of do more of a deep dive, in-person interview, speak to you about some of the properties in particular. We'll do some deal analysis of how they went, what you would have done differently, what you learned along the way, because I think these conversations are really important because they're the transparent conversations. They're the conversations that maybe a lot of people don't have because they want to make it sound easy when there's a lot of hard work that goes into it and a lot of graft. And what you're seeing now and you being able to say, oh, I bought a bank and I made a nice video and I made it, like, you can't explain all of the struggles in a 10-minute, YouTube video of what went into this and the late nights. And like, I'm sure you've done all sorts. You've been on site. You've been the guy that, you didn't want to pay for a laborer. So you were sweeping the site and making sure it was tidy and unloading, loading, damaging suspensions in cars. I mean, I know how much of everything. So I'm sure you're probably the same.
If you've never done that, then you can't be a developer. I guess everyone's done that.
You have to put way too much sand and cement in the back of a car, like, because you needed it, and they weren't delivering the day you needed it. Your trades were saying we need it.
I think, even over the years, there was a time when I had a miss. Well, my missus I'm with now, to be fair, and I had a piece of chipboard left over from a project and a piece of wood. And I thought, oh, do you know what? I want to put it in your car. So as small as it is, I put it in her car. The chipboard's worth, 20 quid? The wood's worth 5 quid. So I was taking, a £25 return back in 2015 because £25 a lot. Because I needed to refurb. Driving back, chipboard's 2.2 meters long, crack the windscreen. Bang. How much did the windscreen cost me? 120 quid, I think. How much refund did I get?
So that was one of your worst return on investments for that return project. That's the funny thing, though. You have to be prudent with the numbers. Like, you can't run before you can walk, and you can't be like, oh, I made 30 grand on that project, I'm going to start disregard costs and start to throw away material. You have to stay, with that, you have to stay on track. You have to stay humble, stay grounded to allow you to have that growth. Because if you start sort of not worrying about the money, you'll find it falling out of your hand because you're not respecting it.
100%.
That's good. So I've seen. I wanted to talk about briefly because obviously time is flying by. Some of the projects you've been working on, you've got some, you know, some young, I'd say under 20s. I think they were. It was you invited under 20s to come down. So what were you doing there?
Yeah, so I mean, just generally, I've been doing it over the last 2 years. I think the way it worked, so even before COVID, what happened generally is I think I had one of my mum's friends say, "Look, a little under 20 wants to come and have a look at one of the sites." So I said, "Yeah, that's fine." Put it on my Instagram as well. At the same time, I think 18 months ago, 2 years ago, I had about 2 people say, "Look, can I come with you tomorrow?" And that was the day before when I said, "I'm doing it tomorrow." So they came. We looked at some HMOs. It went well. I then started to say, "Look, under 20s, I'm doing a site day once a year, maybe, or twice a year. Come and have a look." The one I did recently then, so they went to the bank, that's in Sheffield. I also was doing a structural damage project 20 minutes away from Sheffield, so they came to have a look at that as well. And the main reason behind the day is more about, look, when I was 18 or 16, I went to PIN meeting, to then go to the next step up in terms of learning. As you can appreciate, back then there was no Instagram, there was minimal YouTube videos, so it was a case of paying 15 grand for a learning course. I actually didn't pay the 15 grand and do one. I was contemplating it. I actually went and put that money into a property there and then. But I did have friends that paid the money in 3 grand and 4 grand. But my meaning behind this one now is saying, look, come and spend a day with me or 3 hours or however long it is. It's not going to cost you anything as a under 21. I'll buy you food as well. The reason there is
Good food?
Any food. Name a place, any food, doesn't matter. You want Subway, I'll give you Subway. You want McDonald's, you want Novikov, name your place, we'll get it. Unfortunately, I don't have products in London, so you can't name Novikov.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so it's more about, look, I didn't have that opportunity. So the opportunity I didn't have, let me give someone else.
Okay, cool. No, that's big. That's big, man. I'm sure they appreciate it, and I'm sure it's the knock on it. It's like, you know, they'll appreciate it, and you'll know you're kind of, it's a day out of your week, you're busy, but at the end of the day, like the value it will give to them. And when you see one of them sort of 3 years down the line, they're telling you about a project that they bought and something they did, that's when you'll really feel it.
Yeah, 100%. And I had a chap that came to one of them about a year ago, and he dropped me a message saying, "Look, mate, I've just got my first deal agreed, and it's nearly about to complete." And he just turned around and said, "Oh, look, mate, thanks for the advice, bro." So even that little thanks for the advice, bro.
You know what's so funny? Because you speak to so many people, you probably didn't even remember, like, at the time the advice that you gave him, like, or but it was just that, like, and that's like my sort of DMs. You know, I mean, I try and briefly respond to, you know, as many people as possible. But it was crazy. I forget his name now. But I was just like, I was out in Dubai last week, and I was in a club just chilling. This guy came over to me. He was like, "Oh, yo, Kazi," and I was like, "Oh, yo, what's going on, bro?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yeah, but I just wanted to say I completed that project. We made like 130K. Like, yeah,
wow.
Thanks for your advice." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, no problem." And he like could tell I didn't know what he was talking about. And he opened his phone, he showed me the DMs, and I was like, "Look, you sent me the floor plans, you sent me this, that, and whatever." And I did it, and I smashed it. And I was like, "Well, that's that proper." I was like, I was just sitting. I just sat back in the corner of the club for a little while, and I was like, "That's hard."
Yeah,
He's hard. And I was mad happy. I was like, "Yeah, this is like a real thing. Like, people are really grand. We're all grand together, and it's a sick little Instagram community that we've. It's not like in the whole kind of mentoring and big property network space, but I feel like this space of just genuine, like, organic support for one another is really important. And yeah, definitely, well, I'm excited to like do a proper little interview with you when you come down. We chop it up. I'll get you a Novikov to repay, you know what I mean, to repay everything that you've done for the people.
You sure you want to see the bill, mate?
Listen, you're quite a big lad. I don't know. I might be in the back washing the dishes for a little while if you eat too much, but we'll see what we can do. Nah, that's good, man. That's good. So what are you up to? What's your plan, sort of just short term? Like, what are you? Do you know what I mean? What are you going to be working on now over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, short term. So I've got a few little bits that I'm still kind of finishing off. Kind of between this now and early Feb next year, I've got a few kind of structural damage ones that I've got like planning on for a third bedroom and an extension. So that one, to be fair, just came through, so it's a bit close to Christmas. So we'll leave that till the new year and then hit that one hard. I've got planning in for a demolish of a unit and rebuild. So trying to build like a nice 4-bed dormer property. Just waiting on the planning on that. I've got something else.
I'm going to send you. I'm going to send you my videographer. I'm going to send you South Point Media. I'm going to send him up to Nottingham. we're gonna get him accommodation. I'll pay for his accommodation somewhere. He's gonna spend like a week with you. I just want to get you to just show the people, because there's so much value. Like, forget about the whatever. Like, but just the fact that, bro, trust me, if you walk around, you won't believe it. It'll be a book. It'll be like that little YouTube documentary.
Yeah.
Like maybe 3-4 videos, like nice episodes, and you'll inspire and motivate so many people. Trust me, the blessings that you'll bestow on people, you won't believe it.
Yeah, and then over in Lincoln as well, I've got I'm doing the footings on a 4-bed, so I'm trying to get that thrown up before Christmas. I'm doing 2 bungalows. Again, just about throwing the footings up on that one as well. Hopefully getting up to the eaves, as in the roof level by hopefully. So yeah, got a fair few. I've got some HMOs down here in Nottingham that I'm doing extensions on the PD 6 bed. So yeah, just trying to, I guess, get through all of those and then hopefully pave the way for, like I said, for the 10 units and stuff like that next year. I'm working with a few partners that are saying, look, where is it? So again, like you said, pressure-wise,
ready to go now. Like,
yeah. So they're saying, look, what are you bringing to the table? So they know I'm doing the projects at the moment, but they're saying, look, where's the next opportunity? Which is great when you've got, again, guys pushing you, saying, look.
Because that's the other side of what you were saying. It's not people saying slow down. They're people, they're not pulling you back. They're pulling you along to say, let's go. I believe in you. I've seen what you've done. That's what's good from working with people that you grow with together. You believe it. Like, you might not even have the confidence. So you might have been thinking, oh, I'm going to chill with something. And they're like, no, bro, like, let's go. Let's go and smash it.
Let's go.
You've done this. It's next level. It's time to level up.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I've got, like I said, one guy I'm working with at the moment, and literally that's what he's done. He's just said, look, bro, you've been around for 8 years. Why? Like, where's the 15 units? And that's what he's telling me. I said, look, where's the 15 units? Where's the 20 units? Like, why are you not doing it? And then he said, look, we're ready. So why? And I just sit there and say, look, I don't really have an answer. Kind of not saying scared, but 20 as opposed to 3 units.
It's risk, isn't it? Like, it's like your attitude towards risk, because I've had conversations with people that have potentially tried to run before they can walk and have gone to the 45 unit scheme, and they've put everything in it, and they've gone full circle back to having to just do project management, because their capital, unfortunately, like they sort of lost out, and they overestimated, they overstretched, cash flow issues, etc. So I think definitely it's scary, but nah, bro, trust me, you're in a position where you've got enough experience, you're going to be able to execute it. My final question for you, before we end today, is what motivates you? Like, what motivates you in property? Like, on the days where you're super busy, you're tired, you just want to rest and relax. Like, what keeps you going?
I think just number one, if you do something different, so I think that's always something I'm looking at, something different. So like I said, when I went to the structural stuff, it's something different, the new builds, something different. But I think also now it's a case of, again, money's great, but you get to a certain point where you say, look, now I can pay myself a job salary, as an example. So put the money aside, it's about the other stuff now. It's about, look, when I've worked so much, I now have a day spare that I can help those kids, for example, that are trying to then kind of emulate what I'm doing. So it's more that part. It's more, look, I can now put a day in my diary, I can do a video shoot, so I can showcase what I'm doing and inspire someone else. So I think that motivates me. Again, I've also got my own 2 little boys as well. So again, that's motivation of, look, try and show them that you have to work, if that makes sense. You can't stay at home all day doing nothing. So you've got to be like, look, I'll go construction site. My little boy wants to come sometimes, have a look at the cement pour, and the little things like that. So that motivates me to keep going, I would say.
Yeah, no, bro, 100%. 10 times, 10 times big up you. You're doing amazing things. Like, trust me, you're motivating. You're touching lives that you wouldn't even know, people that you wouldn't even speak, you haven't even spoke to, but you don't even know the difference you'll be making. Like, you inspire me, inspire loads of other people in this property space. So again, bro, just keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate you. I'm sure everyone listening here has got like hella value from this. And yeah, like this has been a episode.
Same with yourself as well, bro. Like I said, same with yourself. Even yourself, even Alfred, the other guys, Tej, all of them. I always lock in for whatever it is, 10 minutes, 15 minutes to see what everyone's up to. You always pick a little gem. And to be honest with you as well, sometimes because I do Lincoln properties 50 minutes away from my house. So sometimes I'm driving, I always get time to tune into the property strap that you do or something. So I'll put that on and just kick back and listen while I'm driving. You get a little gem. So again, you've got the similar experience to me, but there's a little gem of, look, that sentence, I'm like, yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know if I did it. So it's always good.
You don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know until you educate yourself. So you got to keep listening,
100%,
and keep bouncing off each other. But yeah, I've been Kaz from Property by Kazi. This is Brighter Investments. You know what I mean? The home of dealing with structural issues and soon to come with 15 to 20 unit developments. If you're not already, make sure you're following myself, Property by Kazi, on Instagram and YouTube. If you're not following, can we get the spelling of Brighter Investments for those that potentially listening
so
later?
it's Brighter, as in brighter like the sun, then underscore investments on Instagram and also YouTube as well. Some videos coming soon.
Much appreciated. We are back each and every Sunday. Next week, we're going to have another guest because I was away. We've actually got a catch up on Monday with Bricks with Tips and Tuesday with Anxious Investors to make up for the ones that we missed over the last couple of weeks. If you have just tuned in a little bit later, this will be available on Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, as well as down the line. It will also go on YouTube as well. So log into one of those things and listen. Again, we appreciate you spending your time on Sunday for us to spend time and obviously learn collectively about property. My brother, much appreciated. And everyone,
Much appreciated.
Rest of your weekend. Take care, bro.
Thank you.